Hello and welcome to another episode of AppStories. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Doing all right. I'm doing all right. We're here for part two of our holiday experiment extravaganza.
Yeah. Oh man. So this time I will go first.
Okay. Very good.
You can ask me questions. I should have a little introduction first of all.
All right.
I've never been a programmer. I've always been the kind of person who's, like we said last time, we're technical enough about all the technical details without actually being able to write the code.
Right.
But like you, I am proficient enough in knowing about APIs, some sprinkling of security here and there, and I just know what services to use. I keep up with this kind of technical stuff. I've never been a programmer. I have dabbled in learning my way around Python or JavaScript or AppleScript way back in the day.
And like the big concepts from things like shortcuts, it has the basics of programming built into it.
Yeah. But I've always had, historically speaking, that sort of drive to build, right? Over the years, I've always wanted to build stuff, build scripts, automations, custom things for me. That's why I got so into, over the course of 17 years that I've been doing MacStories, I've gotten into a few things like Pythonista, editorial, AppleScript, and then shortcuts, workflow, and then shortcuts and drafts. I've always had that urge to build custom tools for me. But eventually I would always run into this wall of, if you want to have something truly custom, you got to write code. You got to be a programmer. And this has been the biggest change for me over this holiday break. I have been building and creating so many things and truly embracing the you can just build things philosophy. Thanks to AI-assisted programming. And it feels like a superpower. And it feels like I have this enthusiasm and this energy to just create stuff for me, and not just to scratch an itch and not just to waste my time, see if something is possible, to create things that I actually use. Like, it's not just an experiment.
I absolutely get it. Yeah, because that's exactly what I'm doing, right? It's making me more efficient, and it's giving me tools that I didn't have and filling gaps in the tools that I already use.
Yeah, and there's a whole conversation to be had, maybe when we will be done with this series, about like, what does it actually mean if you can just make the app that you want? Our friend Matt Birchler has been writing about this on Birchtree.
Yes.
What happens to the app economy? What happens to the App Store? What happens to developers when you can just create the custom app for you that does exactly what you need and you don't need to go to the App Store anymore? What happens when the mindset switches from, I should go to the App Store and see if there's a tool for me, to, I'm just going to build my own? What happens then? But that's a separate conversation. Here, we're just going to do a recap of the things that we've built. And so I was originally inspired, obviously, by Simon Willison and his HTML tools page on GitHub. Simon Willison, one of the most interesting voices in the AI landscape these days, runs an excellent blog at simonwillison.net, has been writing about how he sort of standardized and formalized all of these simple browser-based HTML pages, HTML tools that he's been building almost exclusively with AI-assisted coding and programming, and sort of how he put them all together in a landing page on GitHub and categorize them, and sort of, whenever he thinks of something like a simple utility that can be done in a browser, things like change the capitalization of some text, to more complex things like run Python in a browser, which I learned it's something that you can do these days. Run a Python script in a browser.
That's amazing. That's
in
amazing.
A web page.
And he's got hundreds of these. He's got over 100.
He's got hundreds. He's got over 100.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by that over my holiday break. And I thought, you know what? I also have some ideas. And there's plenty of things that you can do on the web these days without having to make a native app for Apple devices. I kind of want to make some of these too. And so I set up a system for me to replicate that. And so far, I have built 12. These are all private for now. I'm thinking about how to maybe, I don't know, make them open source or make them available to everybody, because like I have no right over any of this. The AI did it. And so I'm thinking about it as a fun exercise and things to put out into the world. But yeah, it all started, obviously I cleaned up my GitHub account. I removed a lot of junk and craft and private repos from years ago, and I created a structure. I created a repo for just HTML tools, and I was inspired by Simon's work. I created a landing page with detailed instructions for the AI agents, plural, I'm going to talk about this in a second, to follow those instructions and make sure that every new tool that I would build and add to the page would follow some specific guidelines. I would go into a folder, would go on the landing page. The landing page needs to add a new tool. Each tool is presented with a thumbnail preview. The thumbnail previews are actually captured with a virtual browser by the AI. So the AI takes care of writing the code, but also organizing the code in the repo.
I like this idea because I will say that you're a much more organized and neat person than I am, probably. You can imagine what my GitHub page looks like.
I can imagine that.
It's just a list of random stuff.
Yeah. It all started quite simple. The first tool I built was a MacStories Markdown Preview tool, where I paste something, and it gave me a preview on the right side of the Markdown text that looked like MacStories.
Did you pull the CSS out of the site? Is that how you did it?
Yeah, that's how I did it. And eventually it grew. So now you can drag and drop multiple files. You can tab through multiple files. So that, for example, when Devon tells me everything in the repo has been edited for the next issue of MacStories Weekly, I can just open working copy, get all the documents for the upcoming issue of the newsletter, drag these into a web app, and I get tabs for all of the sections of the newsletter that we have, and I can read those. So I started simple like that. But I started doing a lot of research and a lot of reading. I think that first version I actually built in the Claude app with a chat UI, and then I copy and pasted the HTML code into GitHub.
That gets old fast.
It gets old fast, right? And so, like everybody else over the holiday break, I embraced Claude Code in the terminal.
Yeah.
And that's where it started snowballing. So without getting into the technical details of, like, I think you mentioned this last week, the real power of Claude Code is that we're going to be using this word a lot, like the agentic hardness. By that I mean like the way that this agent runs in a loop and performs things and calls tools and runs terminal commands, like the harness, the scaffold is another term that a lot of people use. The structure around the AI, the LLM in Claude Code in the terminal is excellent. It's really, really good. And so I immediately started experimenting with Claude Code. And so the first few tools I built with Claude Code using Opus 4.5. Every once in a while, I would add UltraThink to my prompt.
Oh, yeah, I do that too.
When you do that, it gets a little special color because it sort of enhances the reasoning effort of Opus. And but soon after, also by following another favorite person of mine on the internet these days when it comes to building things with AI is Peter Steinberg. I hope that I'm pronouncing this wrong. It's StyPete on Twitter and Blue Sky. Former founder of PS PDF Kit, I want to say. That was eventually acquired, maybe.
It was acquired by somebody. It was basically an API. We would know it from PDF Viewer, which is a very generically very generically named, but very excellent PDF Viewer and editor app that I'm sure is still out there. But that was a demonstration of what the real product was, which was an API that was then sold to enterprises and others that were dealing with PDFs.
Yeah, and I think the legend goes that Peter retired after, I think, selling PS PDF.
I think so, yeah.
And came back from retirement to start playing around with AI coding tools, AI agents. And in the span of a year, he's become one of the leading voices in terms of AI-based programming. He has so many open source projects on his GitHub page, including some that I will write about on MacStories soon. But in any case, I started reading Peter's blog, and I noticed that Peter was basically saying, I've been building so much over the past year, and I don't have this complex Claude Code setup. Claude Code can be quite complicated, with skills and plugins and hooks and like all these things that you can add. Sub-agents. Like instead, Peter was saying, all I do is I actually use Codex. Yeah. So not Claude Code, but Codex, the command line utility by OpenAI.
Yeah.
That runs the special Codex model. Peter was saying, I just use Codex with the 5.2 model, high or extra high reasoning effort, and it's my favorite coding agent to date. I was like, that's interesting, because like everybody's talking about Claude Code, and here is this person who's obviously very productive and very prolific right now using Codex. And so I'm here to tell you that over the past 2 weeks, I've been using both Claude Code and Codex.
Okay.
And Codex is incredible. I think for my more complex projects that I will talk about in a second, I've been using almost exclusively Codex with 5.2 extra high reasoning effort. It's a slow model. It thinks a lot. It spends a lot of time reading documentation up front, reading all your files, and then it starts coding. And it can work for 45 minutes to an hour to 2 hours, depending on the code base. But that model has solved so many issues for me that Opus created sometimes in the first place. It's a beast. It's like having like a virtual programmer on your side. And so that's what I've been using. And I've come to sort of understand that I have a bit of a preference for these two tools. Like I think that Claude, for example, has more taste, so to speak, like when it comes to visual styling or creating documentation.
Does a pretty good job out of the box with a web app, I've found.
Does a pretty good job, but for extra hard problems, that's when I invoke Codex. So I have built, for example, a collection of custom remote MCP servers for services that I use that did not have an MCP integration. I have created and deployed using Codex and its Cloudflare integration, MCP servers for Fitbin, my RSS client of service of choice, Readwise Reader, YouTube Transcript.io, and Raindrop. Raindrop I don't use anymore. I have embraced saving all my bookmarks into Notion.
Good. I wonder if you come around to my way.
Your way was the right way. But yeah, I created this MCP service and I added them to Claude. So in Claude, in the Claude app, the main Claude app right now, I have integrations for Readwise Reader, Fitbin, and YouTube Transcript.
That's great.
Do not exist for anybody else. Codex created them for me and actually created the landing pages on the web for me to connect to those services with my API token and create a unique URL just for me to add to Claude. And it's now become second nature. Every morning when I wake up, I open Claude and I say, let's read my RSS.
I think it's worth stopping you for a second here, because this is a question I had for you when you first told me about this, which is I've been doing, you and I use a lot of similar services. So I use Readwise Reader, I use Feedbin, and both of those have APIs. And my question to you was, why are you building these MCP servers when you could just query the API and create scripts and things for yourself?
So maybe I'm doing something wrong. But I know that a lot of people are saying, instead of MCP servers, the age of MCP is over. You should just be using skills, and the AI will figure out from the skill how to use a terminal command to call an API.
Right.
In my experience, that's never been as reliable or as fast as the MCP connectors.
Okay.
Like, I tried.
No, it can be slow with a skill. Skills are good in certain contexts, but they're not always great.
Because at least for me, like even if you write even if you bundle in the skill an exact script that you want the AI to run when, say, you want to fetch your RSS items, for me, it never did that 100% reliably. Sometimes it would say, oh, I need to rewrite the script. And I'm like, no, you should not rewrite the script. You should just run the script.
I've had that happen too.
With the MCP, it just says, okay, I have an MCP connector. I see that I have a bunch of tools. I'm just going to use those tools.
Yeah.
And so now every morning when I wake up, I'm like, okay, can you, let's read my RSS. And Claude gets my unread articles. And what's nice is that I'm not bound to a folder structure. Claude actually presents the RSS in a way that makes sense thematically. So it gives me all of my Apple news, even if they belong to different folders in my RSS subscriptions, right? Because it's natural language processing.
Yep.
And similarly, I can ask fuzzy questions like, hey, do I have an article in my Readwise about that guy who created a terminal? Like, you can ask those questions.
Yeah.
And it's going to find, thanks to the NCP, it's going to, run through a whole chunk of data that's coming from Readwise Reader, and it's going to say, yes, I think you mean this person who published this article. You saved this article 5 days ago. Do you want to open it? Like, that kind of digital assistant is exactly what I've been sort of inching toward, I think, over the past year.
Yep.
And so all of those MCP servers, all created with Codex. Codex created multiple repos for each MCP server. It's able to cross-reference. Like, for example, if Codex figured out some particular technique when I was building my Readwise Reader MCP server, then it said, oh, I'm going to reuse that technique when building the Fitbin integration. So, like, watching this AI think through hard problems, if you are technical enough and you know what they're doing, it can be quite incredible as a thing to watch.
Yeah, and you and I think, too, one of the things that we do, because we write about these productivity tools a lot, is we kind of analyze the way we work, our own systems a lot. And so when you start building these things and you realize, oh, I really like how I can put a lot of things into Notion, but I also like to use Notion as a data source in all of its databases. And I'm also, of course, doing all these things with Markdown. What you realize very quickly is you tell Claude, it's like, look at all these projects. I obviously have a lot of overlap here with Notion tools, Markdown, documentation. Figure out a way to standardize this and create a common set of tools that can then be called every time you build something new, which is one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about more soon.
Yeah. You mentioned Notion.
Yeah.
That brings me to the second part of my building sort of experiments over my holiday break. I have created 12 web apps, as I mentioned, 12 web apps exclusively built with HTML. They're not using React. They don't require a build step. They're just HTML apps. Okay. Some of them have a so-called service worker alongside them because I want to be able to install them as progressive web apps on my home screen. They have custom icons that I created with ChatGPT, but because I don't like them, I think I'm going to hire somebody to actually do proper icons for me. It also makes me feel good because it's a nice way to have more people, as part of this process of these AI-assisted tools. At least I can have pretty icons made by somebody on my home screen. That makes me feel good about it. There are 3 types of utilities that I've built. The first type is stuff for the smart home. The second type is simple utilities. And the third type is Notion utilities.
Okay.
The simple ones, I have the web app to convert Markdown in the style of MacStories. I have another one that is called Shell Zap. So Shell Zap is, when you sometimes you copy some text from the terminal.
Yeah.
And you paste it. And it's all messed up because of the column wrap of the terminal.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Like you got the weird line breaks and the extra spaces. I built this utility that I can paste my messed up text and it cleans it up
Oh, that's
and it gives me like proper line breaks and proper paragraph breaks.
I have something similar in a different vein, which I should just quickly mention right now, which is, have you ever had that thing where you take a URL and you copy it out of something like a Google Sheets or Notion, and you paste it somewhere, and it gives you the URL in Markdown format, but it's the URL linked to the URL?
Oh my God,
and all you want is the plain URL, right? You just want the plain text URL?
Yeah.
I created in like 1 minute a pop clip extension that fixes that.
Yeah.
Just turns it back into a regular URL. And so now I just highlight that thing, boom, and I'm done.
Nice. The other one that I have is called Markdown Fixer. This is actually interesting. So Brett Terpstra recently released a script called Markdown Fixup. It's basically a Markdown linter. So linting in code means to make your code consistent and to follow best practices and to clean up the code so that it's always consistent and follows like, tabs instead of spaces and, that kind of stuff. And I re-implemented Brett's script as a script that runs in Python in the browser using Pyodide, which is a browser-based Python interpreter. And so I have this page where I can paste Markdown text, and the output is a linted Markdown that always follows best practices. Like, for example, always put a space after a pound sign in a headline.
Right.
Remove all trailing white space. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Make sure that bold and italic are always following the same format. Like stuff like that.
Yeah, cleans it up.
Cleans it up. And it's all based on Python in a browser.
Nice.
Then I have 3 web apps for the home. These are based on matching Python servers that are running on my Mac Mini server.
Okay.
They're proxies, essentially. One is a web app called NAS Control for my NAS. It connects to my IP address of my NAS. And again, Claude Code figured out that it was possible to install this Python library to communicate with my NAS. Claude Code actually pinged my network and talked to my NAS in its thinking process.
Yeah.
So because I gave it network access,
right,
it was able to debug the thing on its own before writing the code. Incredible. So NAS control, it shows me the temperature of my NAS, the CPU temp and the memory temp, the memory usage, the free storage, like stuff like that.
Sure.
I have Rune Visualizer. This thing talks to my Rune library, my Rune music library, and it shows me what's playing, shows me what's coming up, shows me the artwork, and shows me, what song am I scrobbling to Last.fm.
That's nice.
Again, based on an extension that I installed in Rune, and exposes my Rune library over the network in my home. And obviously I can access it with Tailscale and,
sure,
the deal. And lastly, and this one I'm really proud of, I don't know about you, John, I hate my TV remote.
Oh yeah, it's so bad.
And my deep hate for my TV remote has been compounded by the addition of the Philips Hue sync box. Because now, not only do I have to use my TV remote, my LG TV
but you
remote,
have to go into the Hue app.
Now I need to go into the Hue app to switch inputs. And I was like, I'm not going to take this anymore. We are in a new era. So I asked Claude Code, hey, I hate my TV remote. I have this model of TV connected to my network. I'm using the Philips Hue sync box. Can you figure out if it's possible to build a remote for me that just has these features with this design? He was like, sure thing, I'll get to work. Just give me network access. It's like, okay. So Claude talked to my TV.
I should do this.
Found the API for the Philips Hue sync box, pinged my network, requested authorization with a ping code to be able to access and control my TV.
Yeah.
And now I have the TV remote I've always wanted. It lets me switch between the native inputs of my TV, like live television or HDMI 1, HDMI 2. Lets me open the native WebOS apps. Like, for example, we have Now TV in Italy, which is a streaming provider owned by Sky. It's a built-in app, but also you have built-in apps like Netflix or YouTube. I can open those. Something that takes me 3 clicks with a virtual remote, switching from a WebOS application back to live television takes me 3 clicks with WebOS. It takes me 1 click now with my custom remote.
That's nice.
And I can now switch inputs for the Philips Hue Sync box from the same remote.
Yeah, that's nice. Everything's consolidated in one place.
Everything's consolidated.
And it's only the stuff that you use.
There's a volume bar. There are volume buttons. There's a power on and power off function. Nice. It's incredible. And finally, my Notion tools. I have created the Notion tools of my dreams so far. I should say that that all of these are consistent in terms of visual design. I created thanks to both Claude and Codex, I created a design guide document that contains instructions to replicate the liquid glass visual aesthetics in CSS in a browser.
I've been doing this too, and it's remarkably easy to do. It works.
Yep. So I have this liquid glass web apps for Notion. My most used one is Daily Note Append.
Okay.
It's a giant text box that lets me easily append text, files, or dictate text, which is then transcribed using Google Gemini and appended to my daily note. It automatically finds my daily note in Notion. It's all based on the Notion API. I had to build a Notion proxy because file uploads wouldn't go through a web app to my Notion account directly. Codex created the proxy and deployed it on Cloudflare for me. The Daily Note Append, just like all the other Notion tools, is a progressive web app. Even nicer on Android and on Chrome for Mac. It's a progressive web app with shortcuts, so you can go directly into text mode, file mode, or voice mode from the home screen from Chrome in the dock. I have Daily Note Viewer, which is a similar app just to view my daily notes, and I can tab through all my daily notes and quickly preview what's in my daily notes. It supports HTML previews, so I see my text, I see my rich links, I see my images. And then I have 2 more Notion tools that use Notion as a data source. I started using Notion for my bookmarks, so I now religiously archive every single interesting web page I find. I clip it to Notion. When I clip it to Notion, I have my Notion agent and my tasklet.ai agent reformat a clipping for me. So they automatically tag a page, they include a summary, they create a cover image by scraping the page, finding an image. If they cannot find an image, they take a screenshot of the page. So everything is organized for me. I just clip a URL. That's it. And then I present these bookmarks with a beautiful UI in my custom Notion clippings web app. It's got a grid view with thumbnails. It's got filters, sorting options. I can tap on one and it opens with a pop-up. It's beautiful, and I can mark it as done from there.
Oh, that's nice, and it syncs back.
And it marks it as done in Notion. And
that lastly, I like. I'm gonna need to steal that one from you.
It's so nice. And I also now use Notion for my YouTube watch later. So the same database contains YouTube links.
Yeah.
By default, I exclude those YouTube links in my Notion clippings web app.
Sure.
Because I just want to see my bookmarks. But in a separate app called YouTube Watch Queue, I just see my YouTube videos that I save to the same Notion database. And it's got the same grid UI with thumbnails, summaries created with my custom NCP server for YouTube transcript.io. And Codex figured out how to automatically present those videos with an embedded YouTube player that uses my YouTube cookies from the browser. So that when I watch something in my YouTube web app.
Oh, it's marked as watched on YouTube too.
It's marked as watched in my YouTube history on youtube.com.
Yeah.
And
nice.
so all this to say, I'm technical enough to know how to do this, and I'm still learning a lot. I wouldn't go to my friends and be like, hey, do you know that you can write apps like this? Because the technical overhead required to do this kind of stuff is still so high, right? And you and I, we do a lot of reading. We follow the right people.
Right.
We do a lot of research. We do a lot of tinkering. I have a Mac Mini server. My friends don't have a Mac Mini server.
Right.
But the idea of you can just build your own stuff now without being a programmer, it's infectious, to say the least.
It really is.
Right? And I think, yeah, I keep going back to this idea that it feels like a superpower to be able to do this kind of stuff. I've been using, I've been using my Mac Mini server with Termius. Termius is this app. It's a terminal app for the iPhone that lets you connect to a local, basically lets you SSH into a local machine. I think I'm going to try Secure Shellfish by Anders Borum, per your recommendation, John. But basically, I've been doing this during the day when I'm doing something else. I think of something and I open my terminal and I connect to my Mac Mini. I have a session with Claude or Codex, and I'm like, hey, can you add this to the thing? And I prompt it, and then I close it. And 30 minutes later, I get a notification from Pushover, because I also created a Pushover skill to tell me when the AI is done coding. That tells me, hey, the AI is done coding. Go check out the changes. And I go to my URL and I see those changes. I don't need to wait for it.
Right.
It's like beta. I don't need to wait for an App Store submission because it's all on the web. And I've been doing this in the background all day, every day. I think of something and I'm like, yeah, build it.
Yeah. Those notifications are kind of built right into Secure Shellfish. I've been enjoying that a lot. I think, part of the thing is like, this is the kind of thing that you and I love to do. And the greatest frustration is having an idea and not being able to implement it, because for you and I to get up to speed on the kind of more sophisticated Python scripting or web development tools that we would need to do the things that you just described would take weeks and weeks of research that we don't have because we've got busy lives as it is. So this is a really nice way to be able to do that kind of stuff. What do you want to know about what I've been up to, Federico? I've got a few categories for you.
Kind of everything.
So one of the things, as I already mentioned, is that as I got deeper into what I talked about last week, which was my research system, which, by the way, I named Research Buddy after the Workout Buddy, because the Workout Buddy is my very favorite feature of all time. What I noticed was I was doing a lot with Notion. I was doing a lot with Markdown. I was doing a lot of things with social media. I was doing things that were common across multiple tools. And so what I did was I created something that was called MacStories Common. That was the suggestion of Claude Code, which took a bunch of these tools, extracted them from their individual projects, and made them standalone tools that are now called by these other projects. And by doing that, I had it basically do a code review and find the best version of all the things I had implemented similarly across multiple projects, yank all that code out, put it somewhere else, and then just call into it to get those tasks done. And that has made developing additional tools even faster. So that was kind of a neat moment during the holidays where I figured out that I could do that and that would work. I did a lot of refining of the stuff that I already had. I did a lot of refining of things like the MacStories Deals stuff. But I also started trying to find ways to connect tools that I've never been able to connect in new ways. I created a couple of Obsidian plugins. One was to send Obsidian documents, drafts of work that I'm working on, into Matter or into Readwise. And you're like, why would I do that? Well, you could read it, obviously. But I wanted to listen. Sometimes I like to listen to one of the articles that I've written as a way to proofread it. And Matter has really good voices. This was a tricky one to set up because you basically have to create a headless web page that gets sent off to Matter With Matter, it was more tricky because Matter doesn't have an API. So I effectively had to create a headless browser that would load my Markdown as HTML and then click the button to add it to Matter. Readwise Reader was way simpler because they have an API, and I could just send in I could use Obsidian's Markdown to HTML tools that are already built into it. It's part of the way they preview documents in the app, and then send that off to Readwise Reader, which was really easy. That's one where I'm not sure I'm going to use it a lot, but it was kind of an interesting exercise in figuring out how all that stuff works. I spent a lot of time on podcasting, and this was just like a bunch of little tools to kind of speed up the production pipeline that we have. One is I created I basically adapted some tools that FFmpeg includes to loudness match tracks. So like if you're recording a little quieter than I am, it levels us up to the standards that are kind of industry standards for podcasting, and makes sure that one of us isn't too much louder than the other one, which is really good. I used to use Adobe Audition for that, and it was one of the few Adobe tools I was using. So I thought, you know what, I can probably speed this up by using a script in the terminal, and sure enough, I absolutely can. So I did that. I also changed the way that I'm doing transcripts. And this is one of them, I think it's a pattern that I've used a bunch of times that has worked really well, which is combining kind of deterministic Python scripting with generative AI sprinkled on top as a way to kind of take the script to another level. And the way I do it is, first of all, I abandon Apple's speech frameworks because although they're fast, they're not super accurate. They're roughly on par with Whisper, or maybe a little worse in some cases. And then I moved to Parakeet. Parakeet is an NVIDIA LLM that came out over the summer. And there's an MLX version. So I used an MLX version, which is optimized for Apple Silicon. A Python script takes a video, turns it into text based on using Parakeet. Then it has a built-in dictionary of words that I know are commonly misspelled by LLMs, like our names, for instance, and a lot of other things like that. It also has a dictionary of proper spellings of Apple technologies, products, things like that. And at the end, after it does that, cleans up what it knows about, it pipes it through Claude, and Claude looks at it and just says, what looks wrong here based on the context? And, the transcript for like a show like this, it's thousands of words long. And it does a remarkable job. It turned random strings of letters into Bazite, or the name of your headphones from last week. I'm going to have a story. By the time this comes out, I'll have had a story on MacStories about it. And it does a really nice job. So for instance, like last week's episode, the dictionary in the Python script found 27 spelling errors, fixed those. Then it found another 10 though, just having Claude look at it. And at the very end, after those have been corrected too, Claude asked me, which of these do you want to put in the dictionary? So next time I don't have to even rely on Claude finding it through generative AI. It's in the dictionary and it will get fixed no matter what.
So it's kind of self-improving.
It's a self-improving process. And that's been a lot of fun to do as well. The other tools, I guess, I made a dictation tool with WhisperFlow, which is tied to the action button, and it goes directly into Notion. It goes right into my notes in Notion.
How does that work?
So one of the things I found when I was working with shortcuts over the holidays was the most frustrating part of all the things I built was oftentimes shortcuts because of bugs and shortcuts. But what it's very simple in the sense that it triggers WhisperFlow. WhisperFlow then uses shortcuts to transfer it back to my Mac Studio. And on the Mac Studio, all the Notion stuff happens. So WhisperFlow is doing its transcription thing locally through its app on my iPhone usually. And then it gets sent to my Mac Studio where it eventually gets piped into Notion. And that's one of those things where I'm hooking into something that was built for the research tool that takes information and puts it in my notes. instead is taking the dictated notes and doing the exact same thing with it, applying tags, doing stuff like that. And that works pretty well. That's a lot of fun. The other one I did was an article highlights, where I can highlight some text and highlight it, copy it into the clipboard, because there's the text, what do they call them? Text fragments that they're attached to the URL that has the coding for what should be highlighted. That gets sent from shortcuts back to my Mac Studio where the URL is processed, and it goes to the website, finds the full block of text, because if your block of text is beyond a certain number of characters, it really only shows you the beginning of the highlight and the end of the highlight. It goes out, finds all the text, finds any links that are inside that text, reassembles it all, and drops it into Notion as a highlight with the URL so I can go back to it later for research. That was a fun one to build that I think you could probably use yourself. And the last thing I guess I'll mention is I did a lot of the same stuff you were just talking about with figuring out ways to use this externally with tools like Secure Shellfish, figuring out how I can do that on my iPhone and my iPad so that if I could start something at my desk, I don't have to be tied to my desk. I can do it on my laptop. I can do it on my phone. I can do it wherever I happen to be. And that's a combination of both Secure Shellfish, which makes it very easy to connect back and do a session using Tailscale on my Mac Studio, or sometimes just jump desktop, sitting, working on my laptop and opening a view into my Mac Studio from, another floor of my house where I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and working from there.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of that. Just
it's very funny. I once read an article that said that one of the business strategies of Netflix is to create shows that people don't have to pay much attention to, because they even when there's action, it's sort of narrated by the characters. So if you're cooking dinner or something, for instance, you can understand what's going on in the story.
Yeah,
that has been how I've been coding with Claude Code on the couch, is listening, sometimes not watching, and back and forth as a way to, and it works really well because a lot of those shows are like that. You don't have to be watching every second to get the gist of what's going on.
Yeah, so we've been building. But John has something else.
I do. I have something bigger.
We're gonna talk about in AppStories Plus. John is John gonna be an iOS developer again?
I don't know. We'll see.
We're gonna try and find out.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about that in AppStories Plus.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. I think we've got most of this out of our system. I do think we should, though, Federico, talk about the issue that you raised at the beginning and that Matt Birchler's been writing about. How is this going to change the app landscape? I think it will definitely affect it. I personally don't think apps are going away anytime soon, but at the same time, it would be an interesting topic to explore.
Yeah, this we need to think about, because I can think of many ramifications, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we will. So in the meantime, visit us over at MacStories.net and at Club MacStories. Just go to club.macstories.net, and we're online. Just look for us there. Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.